Okay, someone wants to know about Sag woman and Aquarius man. I think Sag and Aquarius are generally a good fit. They have similar disposition about relationships. They're both not really in need of a romantic partner to feel fulfilled. There isn't like this kind of visceral need that some other zodiac signs have. Cancer, as an example, has a deep-seated need to be needed and to be catering to someone and to feel part of a community in that sense, to feel that they have a place where they can emote or out their love. Because of that, most Cancers generally grow up with wanting to be mothers, and I'm speaking specifically about women, of course, because they have this visceral need to be a part of something where they're giving of themselves to somebody that they love. So even when they're not mothers, they are the mothers in their friend group and that sort of thing. Aquarius and Sagittarius are both masculine zodiac signs, so the energy is more active and less passive. They're both very philosophical and intellectual in their approach to the world. They both really value independence, this sense of autonomy over the self, this understanding that we are of God and we're here for a specific divine purpose, and that purpose requires that we stay true to who we are in order for it to be successful in terms of us accomplishing what it is that we were sent here to do. So just generally on that fundamental level, their level of interaction is going to be the same because there isn't a lot of need for emotional connectivity that you would find in people that generally seek romantic relationships for the sake of deep emotional bonds. Those two are very private with their emotions, and they don't really make them the priority of their lives. And what they're really not private about is their thoughts, like their psychology, their beliefs, their values, their ideas. They both have strong ideas around social justice. They both have strong ideas about moving humanity and society forward. Very analytical in their approach to life and living in general. Both very intelligent and very much so focused on the facts. When it comes to these two, it's always going to be facts over feelings, in spite of how good or bad the feelings are. So this kind of like detached need for intensity is really what makes them a good pairing, because they both want the adventure of love. In the case of Sagittarius, it's more the passion of love, and for Aquarius is more something to discover about life and human life. So they both look forward to that discovery, that adventure, but it's hardly ever for the sake of some poor emotional fulfillment that they're having with life in general. So it's almost like they have to, on some level, lose something of themselves in order to make, relationship the way we know it in this reality work for them. So when you have these two personalities together, the flow tends to go very smoothly because there's a basic understanding of, love being something that they define for themselves and not necessarily something that they feel they have to subscribe to because society said so. I wish those two would leave each other alone, but they won't, so I'll go ahead and talk about them anyways. Gemini and Virgo are both ruled by Mercury. Mercury is the planet of communication in astrology. Communication is all about connection. It's about intellectual connection. So oftentimes these two get together because they get their intelligence, they get their insight, they get their humor. Virgo is often fascinated by the candor of Gemini, the way Gemini just let anything fly out of their mouth. That's just enthralling for them. Like, wow, like you can actually just like say what you think, because Virgo is very like restrained and controlled. So Virgo sees that in Gemini and they love it. And Gemini is also very, very funny, which Virgo appreciates, and obviously very smart, very astute. The two of them confuse this sort of intellectual connection with love because they can get each other's humor. They can get the way they each other communicate. They both have control issues. Both are slightly OCD. They both know how to externalize their problems, how to avoid their emotions, and focusing on thoughts and things that, aren't related to feelings. So in that regard, they're very similar, but ultimately, the stability that Virgo needs to feel secure in a relationship is not one that Gemini can provide. Gemini, quite frankly, prefers relationships that are exciting. They don't really enjoy the not so exciting part of the relationship. They don't really enjoy the dull conversations, the lack of spark. Because it's immediate intellectual spark at first sight with these two, there is a belief that there is a long-standing attraction here that's going to ultimately create security for Virgo in this case. And, what turns out, Virgo is not able to find that with Gemini because Gemini loves impulsivity, adventure, last minute plans, changing their mind. Gemini loves everything that Virgo does not like being. Nobody is saying that Geminis cannot date Virgos. It looks like an intellectual connection that two people think is actually an emotional connection when it's not. Mate Roth, who asked it, it's true. What you're saying is true. I don't know if some of you can relate to this, but for many of us who are like cerebral types, space. For those of us that like to live in our heads, unfortunately, sometimes we confuse intellectual curiosity or even intellectual connection with a love connection. A love connection isn't just an intellectual connection. Just because you and someone are sharing a joke and you can communicate well together and, you are able to write your own language together even, and you feel a bond with them that like keeps your mind going and gets your mind excited about seeing them, that doesn't mean that you're actually experiencing love. Nor does it mean that that love connection is actually going to be long-standing and sustaining. I say that precisely for Libra, Gemini, and Aquarius because these are the types of people that fall in love with the way people think and the way people are, and then they fail to recognize like, yes, it's true, this person thinks like this, and yes, I find it so sexy and I find it so alluring that they speak like this and they think like this and they look at the world like this and they make jokes like this. But does that mean that needs to be a relationship? Could that also be a friend? Could that also be somebody with whom you just share ideas and share humor with? You don't actually have to develop that into something physical. It could just be what it is. A lot of times when people have these kinds of like synastry moments where it's like, oh, I've met someone who thinks just like me. If you're Gemini, Libra, Aquarius, you automatically assume that must mean I like them. That must mean I'm crushing on them. And that must mean I want to be with them. When I was younger, I used to like go out with people I was like not even physically attracted to, but I just loved the way they thought. And that's why I would go out with them. But back then I didn't even like recognize that there were other parts of them that I needed to have as a requirement. In other words, I didn't even recognize that I needed to actually find them physically attractive. I didn't even think about that. Like, are they physically attractive and how do I physically respond to them? Because again, when you're an air sign, and in my case an Aquarius rising, you think intellectual connection is romantic connection, and it's not. Someone said, I'm guessing that it's because we also don't want to be bored in a relationship. We need to be able to have intelligent conversations. Absolutely agree. As an Aquarius rising, I would certainly say so. I've never dated anybody that I did not find interesting, that I cannot have a good conversation with. But at the same time, the things that sustain the relationship are other needs. Like, are they a stable person mentally? Do they have a drinking problem? Can they keep a roof over their head? Are there someone who is trustworthy? Are they dependable? Are there someone who provide emotional security and consistency? Are there somebody I want to get old with? Like there's so many layers to this, but for a lot of air signs, unfortunately, they assume if there's an intellectual connection, then it must automatically mean it will translate in these other areas. And they find themselves sometimes in relationships with people that they're not even physically attracted to, but that they're mentally attracted to, but they don't realize that it was just a mental attraction until after the relationship became physical. Those of you air signs in a comment, can you give me feedback on what I just shared? So CatLove224 said 100% agree. And I guess Need a TikTok said I usually fall in love with their mind. Let's see what else. Many things to consider aside from good conversations. Yes, absolutely. So many other things that go into it. Mate said, yes, I'm a full Gemini and I agree. And someone else says, yes, everything that you said is true. I'm a Libra and Aquarius moon and I totally agree. Yeah, it's just something to be aware of. That's pretty much it, isn't it? It's like, we're like, okay, if our minds are going, then we like you. But sometimes our minds are going and there's still shitty people and we don't even realize it.
You can book your astrology reading at intuitivehealing.com. You can also watch videos at Intuitive Healing here on YouTube for Astrology 101 content. Listen to the Aquarius podcast on Spotify, as well as here on YouTube for your horoscope. If you're interested in astrology and love connections, you can visit at Styled Under Libra. And of course, for health and wellness and holistic healing, visit at Styled Under Virgo for all of your astrology content. Thanks so much for watching.